First question I would have is, of all the business ventures that you've been involved with, how many times have you had to raise money for these?
Of all the things that I've done in terms of actually going out and finding money in things that I've been doing, there's probably just two.
Only two times?
Yeah.
On two separate business?
Yeah.
And only one round of financing for each of them?
Correct.
Okay. What kind of risk capital did you turn to? Was that venture capital, private investors?
Venture capital, both of those things. The one that happened most recently was a business that was an iTunes business, and we had all of these archival videos of people like Bob Dylan and Jimi Hendrix and others, George Harrison, performing on video, and it was a model where people would download these videos at $1.99, and they'd be able to store them, and we had to clear all the rights. We had to pay everybody the different amounts from it. It was a nice little business, and we had it up and bootstrapped it for a year, and we were able to gather enough financial information out of there that we ultimately were able to convince a group to put money into this. And in the end, it didn't succeed, but that was the most recent part. And the people who were ultimately providing the money was out of the UK, and in the UK, they unlike the States, they could write off taxes to a loss. So it was money they could put in and invest, and they wanted it to succeed, but if it didn't succeed, they would get the tax breaks, which wasn't true in the States, but it was true in the UK, so it was something to do.
Okay. Did you receive any additional, maybe non-financial support from the people who financed you?
In that case, not really. They had made a lot of money in efforts that were involved in marketing. We didn't really take advantage of a lot of that. So, but I think in other things that Chris views us. This is what he does all the time, right? So he's out there, he's building companies, he makes these things, he gets investors, puts together that type of thing. So that's his specialty. What I do is I build these businesses that we like what you're seeing here with this footage access. It's something where we're able to identify an opportunity and build things out. But I haven't really looked to investors to get us going in any real significant way. But I also haven't been dealing in the types of businesses that Chris has. But we look to places that, like the Beatles project right now. This thing, we needed to eventually figure out who was going to finance this. And so it was an idea from scratch. And we were working with the Beatles on trying to show that there was something that could be done here that they would be interested in. And in the end, they financed the whole piece. So you could consider them being the investors. We weren't looking at them that way. You're looking at them as a group that, was interested in this, but in the end, the money came through, and the money all came from them. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Yeah, because I know that the world there, Dominic, Chris, I find partners, who work in these areas. Chris and I are working on some other things right now to bring things out to that, but it's not my world. That's not where I begin. My world's this archive world and developing projects out of that.
Okay. The time that you tried to raise the money from the venture capital, you didn't exactly tell me why it failed.
Yeah, it's a frustrating thing. It's I had the same partners that I was working with on the Beatles film, and it was like we had gotten together and we were waiting for the Beatles thing to move. It's just kind of a very long process. Yeah. So I had done a lot of work with iTunes when I was in National Geographic, and I had some people there I knew, and we were able to get a really nice contract with them, which is one of the key values of working there, where we had a direct contract with iTunes, where they keep 30%, they give you 70%, and then you can just publish at will. And we built a really nice model so that there's a lot of mouths to feed. You have the people who created the video, you have the people who did the music, you have the performers, the publishing companies, and so we worked out a model where everybody got paid, everybody was happy, and then started to see what kind of downloads we could generate. We had certain titles in there that were just, that would hit top 10 in these downloads, like George Harrison doing While My Guitar Gently Weeps. That time the Beatles weren't even available on YouTube. So it was one of the ways that you could get access to some of these things. But, so we took this, this model, we were using that information to build out a business that would happen over a period of time if we had a lot more video in there, if we were able to, replicate that and scale. And that's where these people came on and they gave us the money to do that. And it didn't scale. We weren't able to reach the numbers in these other titles that were coming out that were in this original bank of titles. Okay. And I'm not sure why. So there's a lot of people kind of gone back and forth on that in terms of why these things weren't generating it to that level, whether there was a lot more video on YouTube, video there, whether people were paying less for this material. But in the end, we had one big play in terms of marketing where we really were investing a lot in there to try to see what we could do. We had YouTube putting all kinds of promotion into it, and it just didn't deliver results. And at that point, the investors lost confidence.
Okay.
So
they actually financed you at first, but then they backed up because
they paid everything they were going to. It was £500,000 that they brought into this, and they had and all of that was put into this piece. We didn't get it all at once. It was on certain metrics, but the final one, because people were getting frustrated that we weren't really starting to realize those types of numbers that we had in those original pieces, and so we just kept working one way or another to get it down. And by the time, but then they invested in this large-scale marketing piece based on certain videos that were out there that hadn't been seen before. And, it was like, if this doesn't work, we've done everything we can. We got New York Times announcements, we got all kinds of great promotion on this, and we, hired some of these top firms. So we got the message out, and the market didn't back it up. Okay.
So ultimately, they did support you, but they just realized that the project will eventually yield profit.
Yeah, and so they basically wanted this, they wanted also to be able to take the tax benefits they would get out of it. So we liquidated the company ourselves, and everybody got paid. It was on where we had a real good ending with anybody who was working with us. We sold the assets in a fire sale to another group that is still operating a lot of that right now. And then they got what they needed was, the ability to take that as a loss and work that through their tax purposes.
Okay.
It's a painful episode. I don't like to go through that very often.
I'm sorry to make you really difficult. I don't think I have any more questions. I'll review the recording, and if I have anything else, I'll email you.
Have you talked